Hello, it's Ross here, and we're going to talk about the 2022 Rising Rookies draft. We're going to do something a bit different. We're going to redraft the first three rounds. Only the first three rounds, is when you get to four, five, and six and seven. It gets a bit dicey. There's not many actual NFL starters that are to be had. So we're going to take a look back, really quickly, buzz through these three rounds, and here we go. So first round, number one, we've got Brees Hall. He's still going to be in 101, even with the ACL. The first seven games of the season, he was absolutely unbelievable. Hit the ground running. I think he had 16 points per game. And yeah, everything you wanted. And even with the injury, he's going to come back. And I'm not really worried about ACL injuries these days. He's going to come back and he's going to lead the backfield, and he's going to be a top five dynasty running back again. So that pick's staying the same. For 102, we've got Garrett Wilson, another Jet, but it's not a homerism. He was the best rookie. He was the offensive rookie of the year, um, and that was with no quarterback. Like he had Zach Wilson, Joe Flacco, and Mike White, or whoever else was thrown to him. He's got Aaron Rodgers at least for the next couple of years, and that sort of separates him from this group. There's like a group of three receivers who are quite close together, and I think Wilson tied to Rodgers and just like his on-field performance makes him the 102. Olave's the next one at 103. He really hit the ground running as well, and he played well despite a terrible quarterback room as well. Maybe not as bad as the Jets, but he had 1,000 yards as a rookie. And Derek Carr is a bit more stable, and he's going to have that sort of reliable receiver in Chris Olave, and he's going to continue to be really, really good for them. I have him just above London. London's 104. And again, it's just for the sort of situation. I think they're all pretty close in terms of talent and opportunity. But London, he was my favourite receiver going into the draft, and I still really like his game. But being in that offense, the Arthur Smith offense, they're just not going to throw the ball. They're like second last in the league last year at throwing, and they drafted Bijan Robinson, so they're obviously not going to change that much. So yeah, slight tick down for London, but still a great player, still a really promising rookie season. Walker's the first one that sort of dropped. He would have been higher if it wasn't for the Seahawks being Seahawks and drafting another running back in the second round. They spend an outrageous amount of draft cap on running backs. Is crazy. They don't get enough hate for it. But Walker's still a good player, and he's still be able to rip off those big runs and sort of be efficient with maybe a little bit fewer carries. He's never going to be the sort of three down bell cow back, because they brought in guys who can catch the ball and he just can't. But I still think he does have some value. So as the 105, a little bit of a drop, but not too much. First real big riser is Jahan Dotson, and it's maybe a bit high for a few people here, but I really liked his game. Like I really liked what I saw, and he was injured for a bit, and he was in and out. And I think his numbers maybe got juiced up a bit by his seven touchdowns, but his on the field play was really exciting. Like he looked like a different speed he was playing at compared to other receivers. And he's probably always going to be behind Terry McLaurin, who's got that big contract. But if they were to get a half decent quarterback in the next couple of years, I think he's maybe a more of a high volume guy, who can be really good for fantasy. Um, Damian Pierce, another big riser, at 107. He's not been hit that much by running back competition this season. When you get a running back, you're always just worried over the off season if someone's going to come in and take the role, steal part of the role, like Walker. But Pierce was decent in sort of the first half of the season. He tailed off a bit towards the end, but the Texans were just like a terrible team. And I don't think anyone would have been good in that situation. They did bring in Devin Singletary, but I don't think he's much competition. I think you're still going to see Pierce as getting a decent chunk of the carries. And then, like I said, if the offense can be competent, then he's going to sort of live up to his talent. He's going to have a good few decent games. Next one, 108, we've got Christian Watson. He's opposite. So he started the season and he was in the doghouse. He wasn't catching any balls and he didn't look that great. But he did sort of develop as a receiver, and he needed that coming in the league. He was an athletic monster who was quite raw as a receiver. But I did see him improve, and he did have an impact on offense. He's got that sort of home run ability. And so even if he does have like slightly less targets, he's going to have that fantasy impact when he catches long touchdowns. So yeah, I like him here in the middle of the first or towards the end of the first. Now we get to the quarterbacks, and a lot of people do have quarterbacks a bit higher than me usually. But I just don't think any of these guys excite me that much. Purdy, he was undrafted in RR, but he's probably going to be a starter for a couple of years at least. Um, Forget about Trey Lance. He's probably going to be the starter. And he might have some games where he gets to 25 points, but mostly it's going to be in that 13 to 15 point range. And yeah, starting quarterback, very good. Plug him in, but doesn't really excite me that much. And talking about not very exciting, we've got Kenny Pickett here next. He's in a very similar spot. I can confidently say he'll be a starter for the next like 2, maybe 3 years, but that's like the only value I can really project right now. I think the Steelers want to run the ball, maybe not put it in his hands as much. And again, he's going to give you that sort of middling QB play. Very exciting, isn't it? But he's a quarterback, so he gets pushed into the first round. Um, Next one, Aidan Hutchinson. I thought he was a bit of a reach at 107, around the sort of mid first for a defensive end is very rich for me. And probably, to be honest, I probably wouldn't even pick him here at 111. I'm just never going to pick IDP here, but tried to sort of take away some of my biases. And Ross Wars is like a Lions league after all. We've got so many Lions fans, so I had to talk about Hutchinson. His sack production came in bunches as well, so it wasn't really that dominant throughout the year, but he was still a rookie and he was still very promising. So we'll see. Isaiah Pacheco spells Isaiah funny, but he was another undrafted guy who got had a really good season, and he had the preseason hype. And usually you don't see these guys living up to it, but he did. So whoever drafted him or picked him up off the waivers in your leagues was really benefited from that. He's always going to be a rotational back, and he's not really a pass catcher. So there's always going to be a pass catcher in Kansas City. It was obviously Jerick McKinnon towards the end of the year. But he's going to get 10 to 15 carries, and he's probably, if he gets a touchdown, then he's a really good starter. That's it. So having a startable running back on your roster, it does have some value. Into the second round, we've got Treylon Burks, who dropped a bit, but he's a really good prospect coming in, and I think he did live up to it a little bit. He got some bad PR by his own coach Vrabel early on, was bashing him, and no one really watches the Titans because they're so terrible and boring. But the main thing is they just don't pass the ball. I thought he did well in the spots that I did see him, but they just don't pass the ball. It's another AJ Brown scenario. His ceiling's always going to be capped, even if they do get Tannehill back and healthy for a full season. He's just stuck in a bad situation. So yeah, it's still a better pick than Nakobe Dean. Don't get me wrong. You're not going to see Nakobe Dean's name in this redraft. I'll tell you that. 202, we do have a linebacker though, Quay Walker. He could have easily been higher, to be honest. Um, he had a really good season in his rookie year, and he's leapfrogged Devin Lloyd as the LB1 of this class. He finished as LB27 on the year, and I think he could sort of jump into that LB2 fringe LB1 territory this year as he continues to develop. Like he didn't have much playing time in college, so another year in the NFL, and I think he's going to do well. So a really good player that I like, an ascending player. Um, JMO is the next one, first real faller. Like he dropped 13 spots. He was picked at 102 last year. Even that was high then, because we knew he wasn't going to play like the first year, even though there was some buzz that he would get in the end of the season, but he didn't quite. And then obviously he's got the suspension this year, so we're not going to see him play football for like the first year and a half of his career. And those guys don't really tend to be like impact guys and be elite contributors. Um, there's just a lot more guys that I feel comfortable are good football players and that we've actually seen stuff from, but we've not seen anything from JMO yet. And also he's in Detroit, and Amon-Ra St. Brown's the daddy there, and he's going to be commanding a lot of the ball. So yeah, Damien Pierce was the 204, but it's Desmond Ridder here that I'm picking. He's another slight riser just because he's a starting QB. And again, he's on a short leash. He's a third round pick, and he's not going to be in Atlanta very long. unless he's performs and he's really good. Like they're in, I don't know, it must be like 3 years into a rebuild. They need to pick a quarterback soon, like an actual good quarterback. So I think he's not going to have much time. I think he may be competent at best. And again, it's another Arthur Smith offense, so the passing volume isn't necessarily going to be there. And you're just going to be relying on getting some vulture touchdowns. I know vulture touchdowns are usually a running back thing, but he's going to vulture some Bijan Robinson touchdowns on play action. Yeah, 205 here. We've got George Pickens. I'm just a George Pickens hater. I always have been, and I always will. And I don't really know why, to be honest. He had some really good circus catches last year, he sort of did live up to a bit of the hype. It's a toe tapping, body control, really good catches, really good fun highlight player. The reason he's down this far is again because I'm a hater, but probably because he's not going to have that sort of consistent volume. You look at Deontay Johnson as more of the consistent volume guy, and George Pickens is the big play guy, and I don't see that changing much to make him like a fringe wide receiver one, consistent wide receiver two. But we'll see. I could be proven wrong. Could absolutely be proven wrong. Um, I'm happy to admit that. 206, and this is Devin Lloyd, who's another big faller. He started out the season really well. Like the first 3 games, he had 19 points, 26, and 29 points. But that was sort of kept afloat by a couple of interceptions, and he couldn't repeat that throughout the rest of the season. Towards the end of the season, he was a liability on the field for them, and he lost a lot of snaps to Chad Muma and a few other guys. And yeah, he's still relatively high because you think the resources they put towards drafting him is going to give him opportunities again to impress. And he can improve, obviously. We're just looking at this 1 year into the career. But yeah, I think he's going to have more shots because of the draft capital. But to be honest, I'm not confident in his performance so far in his career. 207, Kayvon Thibodeau. Um, Talk about one big game. He had 52 points in a fantasy game, like towards the end of the year. I think that maybe won some playoff games. But if you look at the overall season, he had like 3 sacks, and his production did improve towards the end of the season, but it wasn't otherworldly that you think from a 52-point season. Um, he is going to have some sort of more favourable matchups one on one with that off the defensive line. So you've got Dexter Lawrence, Leonard Williams, even Aziz Ojulari. So you might be a high upside player, get some good one on one matchups and put up some sack numbers. So we'll see how year 2 goes for him. The next one was probably the pick of the draft last year. Jalen Petrie was a 5th round draft pick for Sean and his Puffins, and he became the safety #1 overall, top safety, and it wasn't even close. I don't really care much about safety, so that's why he's relatively low for being the #1 at his position. And I think it's maybe not going to be repeatable as well. Like he had a lot of volume last year because of just the terribleness of the Texans defense all around them. And he was like the one shining light. He still wasn't a great tackler, but he got a lot of opportunity to make tackles because he was just flying around and no one else was doing anything. With DeMeco Ryans there, the defense is probably going to improve all round. And you maybe not see as much opportunity. He'll still be a good safety though, and like in the second, that's a good pick. And obviously in the 5th last year, Sean got an absolute bargain. So yeah, big riser. Next one's Rashad White. Um, he's a starting running back. That's what I can say about him. And he's got a good skill set as well. So he's a pass catcher. I think he caught 50 balls last year. So he does have the skill set to be efficient with few carries. Look at Tony Pollard, seems to be the sort of poster boy this year. And he can put himself sort of ahead of other backs in this range. There's a few different ones that I was deciding between because of his skill set. Talking of which, Brian Robinson is 210. I don't really have much to say. He's sort of slotted in to be like a starter and early down running back for the Commanders, but he's fine. He's fine, I guess. That's about it, really. 211, we've got Kyle Hamilton. So he was very disappointing as a rookie. Like he was supposed to come in, he was be the next coming of Derwin James, but he was completely blocked and sort of out, maybe not outplayed, but he was blocked by Chuck Clark, who got all the snaps. But I think now that Chuck Clark's out of Baltimore, Hamilton's going to have the opportunity. He's had a year of development, and we're going to see him improve a lot. So this is probably higher than I'd like for a safety, but I'm still believing the hype. I'm still believing the talent can show through in year two. To round out the second round, we've got Greg Dulcich at 212. And rookie tight ends just never produce. So that was never to be expected. Remember that for the draft this year as well, guys. But I thought Dulcich looks good on the field and the time that he had. Sean Payton always likes to use tight ends as well. And obviously, Russ likes throwing to the tight ends because they're the only guys you can see behind that big offensive line. But top 12 really doesn't mean anything at a tight end because the position's so bad. But I think Dulcich is going to be a top 12 tight end this season. I really like where he's at. Moving on to the third round. And 301, we've got James Cook. So he seems to be, every year we seem to have sort of a landing spot darling. So a guy who maybe wasn't as hyped before the draft falls to a great landing spot in people's eyes, and then gets launched up the draft. He wasn't too high here. I seen in other leagues he was up quite a bit higher. But yeah, he's a 2022 version of Clyde Edwards-Helaire or Bishop Sankey if you want to go back further. But yeah, I still think he's got a good skill set. Again, he's got the pass catching, and he can sort of rip off big runs. So he does have the ability to be efficient on few carries, and that's what he's probably going to have to do to make himself sort of live up to that early second round, late first round billing last year. Tyler Argill was, if I was doing this 2 weeks ago, he would have been a lot higher, but the Bijan Robinson pick just totally tanked his stock. And fifth round rookies are not going to be like a good dynasty asset for a long time. They're always going to be replaced, but I didn't think it'd be this quick. And yeah, so he still has a little bit of value here in the third round because if there's an injury, he can fill in, and we know he's a good and he's going to get a lot of carries and do well with them. But yeah, it's nothing more to say than that. 303, we've got Sam Howell, and am I buying the Sam Howell as a starting quarterback hype? Probably not, but there's a lot of smoke, and with this much talk, you don't think they're just going to turn around and hand it to Jacoby Brissett. So I think there's going to be some level of competition, and at some point in the season, Jacoby Brissett is going to become the starter. But yeah, it's potentially a starting quarterback, and you get him in the third round. I have to pick him here. And the next one, Romeo Doubs, he was probably the better of the Green Bay rookies to start the season, the opposite of Watson. He was probably trusted by his quarterback more. And then he doesn't have the same upside as Watson, though, the sort of big playability and just the pedigree. And they also drafted Jaden Reed pretty highly as well. So there is a bit of competition there. And it seems like I'm talking myself out of this pick. So maybe I should have put him a bit higher, a bit lower than the 304. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Next one, K Dotton, another tight end. He was a really hard fade for me last year. Like I thought he was just a landing spot guy again. They didn't have anyone else on the depth chart, so he was suddenly going to be a rookie tight end who performs, which just doesn't happen. But he did have flashes, and he was productive in spots. And again, they don't have anything else there. Baker Mayfield needs someone reliable because he's not a very good quarterback. So yeah, he could have some value, and I just wanted him here so that the next two picks can be the same pick as they were last year. So the first one is John Mechie, and yeah, it's a bit. He could have been like higher by default just because he's almost redshirted his first year, and because he had leukemia, like it's not his fault at all. He was a second round pick in 2022, and that receiver room really needs playmakers. Like the Texans have like no talent at that position. I'm not interested in your Nico Collins hype. So he could still have a decent year, but I like the synergy of having him picked by the Puffins here last year and now in the redraft. And talking of which, Christian Harris is the same pick here as well. He did take some time to become a starter, a little bit injury, a little bit developing. But when he did become a starter, he gave me like exactly what I expected, which was decent fantasy production and terrible like on-field production. I didn't expect it to be that bad, but he was in a good spot, and that's why I picked him. And I think he's the same this year as well. D'Amico Ryans comes in, and they play two linebackers starting all the time. We've seen production out of obviously Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, even Al Shair when he came in as well had some good production. So I'm expecting the same from Harris. Just a steady guy, I think, a sort of startable linebacker. Talking about startable, Jaquan Brisker was a really solid producer. I think he finished as safety 14 in points per game. He was one of the best players on the Bears defense, so he's going to be the sort of the leader, the starter there for a long time. And just getting consistent points here in the third round at the position, yeah, we'll take that. He's going to be 100% snap guy for the foreseeable future. Um, Next one here, 309, we've got Wandale Robinson. He's a riser because although he didn't really get on the field much, like his first year he had a lot of injuries. When he was on the field, he did flash, like, and he had some startable weeks. I think he had like 5 weeks, and three of them were sort of half decent games, what you'd expect from like a later round pick. And he did seem to command a lot of touches as well. Like they put a lot of draft capital into him, the second round pick. So I think they're going to continue to give him some opportunity. Um, that room is just a mess. So they've got like eight small slot wide receivers who can move around the formation. But yeah, I don't mind taking a bet on Robinson this late in the draft. Um, Chigo Kwonko, nailed that. 310 here. I get this is probably too high, but I just like the guy. I just like him. I like what I seen from him last year. He's one of the only dynamic threats on that Titans offense as well. And they do love a tight end in Tennessee. The position is just so easy to become a starter, to become a top 12 guy. I don't mind taking a late third on a Conco, who's a guy who I liked coming out of college. I didn't expect him to produce the first year, and he did bits. He did some flashes. So just a guy I enjoy. Um, and Alex Pierce, to go the exact opposite, he's another guy like Pickens, who I'm just a hater. I just didn't like him coming out. I just thought he was like an athletic guy, like a combine darling, but not much else in that. It didn't really do anything to change my opinion of him in his rookie season, but the upside is he's got Anthony Richardson there. He's got a cannon of an arm, and there could be value in Alec Pierce just running straight down the field and Richardson finding him on the play action. So yeah, late third, why not get a guy who was a second round pick last year? And my Mr. Irrelevant is Troy Anderson. Um, he's fell 8 spots here, but he didn't really do anything again to change my mind this year. Like we knew he was a developmental guy coming in, didn't play the position for very long in college, but he managed to sort of increase his snaps towards the end of the season. And there's no one there in Atlanta who I could see challenging him for the inside linebacker spot. Caden Ellis came in, but he's definitely more of a hybrid linebacker edge guy. So Anderson will be that sort of consistent middle of the field presence. And I hope he can live up to his promise and his athletic talent. Yeah. So that's it. Thank you very much for listening to me. I tried to keep it short. Hope that worked. And enjoy the draft. Catch you later.